Why does it say waiting? It's delayed.
That would be why. Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure. Some people.
Hello. Hi, Vixen.
Uh-oh, we're going to get the feedback. You need headphones.
Okay, I don't have headphones, but
I do. I can share an earbud.
They won't work because he doesn't have that thing
in
there. But this will work.
Okay.
What thing you need?
The thing that Chris needs to fix, where my headphones plug into the front of my computer instead of the back of my computer.
Hi, Vixen.
Oh,
But there's not feedback as long as YouTube is muted.
We can hear ourselves. We don't need to hear through there.
we're just delayed.
Bye.
Can you shut the bedroom door again?
okay. Why are you cold?
No, but it's distracting from because the sunlight comes in there.
Okay.
So how's everybody doing?
Maya is visiting South Carolina.
This is going to be so much fun. Yeah. So we should probably just get started. I mean, do you want to wait a couple minutes?
We can wait a couple of minutes.
Okay, wait a couple minutes. Let everybody come in. I'll let everybody know that we are on.
Yeah, the only problem with this is, like I said, there's a tiny bit of lag, so we see ourselves like that's the only bad thing to doing it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like this. But I don't know how to do the encode, whatever.
Yeah, I've done it before. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt.
I got OBS and tried to understand it. And
it's really complicated.
I was like, what in the hell? I did the link stuff. I did the stuff. I'm like,
once I got it working, I was scared to touch anything. I was just like, don't touch anything. Don't touch a setting. Because once I got it working, I have no idea how I got it working.
Yeah, I like Google Hangouts. I prefer to actually do Google Hangouts and then put it on YouTube, and they don't do it that way anymore.
Google Livestream is Google Hangouts. So when we record the Literary Roadhouse, when we record Literary Roadhouse, we do not get the live chat. No, we do get the live chat. We get live chat.
Okay, so we can go here, but see this.
Yeah, because when I do it, we are in a live event. We're not in a Google Hangout.
Yeah.
And so I normally see this window, but if I go to our channel, we can see that.
What?
It's the same thing. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
This is what I do for my.
See, I used to go through Google.
Yeah.
And you could do the live, and it would, and you could do it to YouTube, and it was different.
It was.
But they changed as of April 27th or April 26th or something. This is the only way that.
Yeah. I actually prefer it this way because back in the day when we used to use through Google, when you did through Google, I always use live events because the video was better. And so the YouTube video you would end up with at the end was always much better. So I think we are ready to get started. This is really weird seeing myself talk like 3 seconds ago. But just so everybody knows, my name is Maya Goode. You may know me from either my BookTube channel, which is Maya Goode, or from my everything else channel, which is What's Getting Light. I've been on YouTube for about 10 years, and I met Burgess through YouTube. I was watching your writing videos. You were commenting on my writing videos. I was watching a lot of your journaling videos.
NaNoWriMo.
Exactly. And when I was decluttering, I sent some of my stuff your way because I figured.
Actually, before you started decluttering, you got a pen, and then you had extra pens, and you sent me a fountain pen, and then later you sent me a 7C's, the Nanami Paper 7C's writer.
Yep, that was when I was decluttering.
Right, and then you had just started, and then later you started more decluttering, and you sent me some stamps and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it was great because when I was decluttering, I didn't want to just throw stuff away. So I was constantly looking for people that I knew would use something. I also didn't want to give something to somebody where it would be clutter for them either. And some of my paper and like crafty stuff, I knew you would appreciate it, and that's why I sent it to you. And so when I was traveling, I'm hitchhiking. I've been hitchhiking for 3 weeks. I started in Austin, Texas. I knew that I was going to come up and see my friend in North Carolina, and I wanted to see you.
Actually, you're doing a walkabout. It's a walkabout.
Is this a walkabout?
This is a walkabout.
Okay, we'll call it a walkabout. I don't know.
We like that. I like that a lot better. It's a walkabout. That's much more creative and zen. It's a walkabout.
It's been a really interesting time, and getting to meet you was really cool. I had an interesting situation happen yesterday. A kid stopped me on the street. He's like, "You're on YouTube." I was like, "Oh my God." He was like this really cute, handsome young man, and I was like, "Who is this strange guy talking to me?" And then he's like, "You're on YouTube," and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed."
It's really weird. I haven't. Well, I don't know how many people out where I live actually, but I haven't really had anybody like that, the stranger. But family members are just now really starting to pick up on the YouTube thing. So my mom had my brother and my son try to, so she could see some of the YouTube videos. My brother's girlfriend, my in-laws, my father-in-law and my mother-in-law were talking about it. My mother-in-law watches some of, on occasion she watches some of the videos, but she really likes the pictures that when I do pictures on Instagram and then they show to Facebook, like the journal pages and stuff like that.
Yeah. Your channel has really blown up over this last year. Yeah,
it's been weird. I got stuck. I was booming, and then I got stuck right at like 1780 something, and now I'm like right at 1900.
Yeah.
I was gonna wait and do the Janelli Fish giveaway when I hit 2K, but it got so close that I needed to do it while I had a little bit of extra money, so I could go ahead and order it and get everything ready. And I just went ahead. Once it hit 1800, I went ahead and did the giveaway. And I had the choice. I could have labeled the video giveaway, which would have got me a lot more subscribers.
Yeah.
There's something about giveaway
like free
videos.
Stuff.
Yes, they want free stuff. But how many of those people would have stayed?
Yeah, that's true. And you want to reward the people that have been on your channel for a really long time and are really supportive of you and your creativity and your writing.
I labeled the video at the end of the title and a surprise instead of a giveaway, because a lot of and I gave them, I think, a week or two to do the stuff. All you had to do was be a subscriber, like the video, and comment and tell me something about, I think it was a traveler's note, but why the Janelli fish, it was something about creativity or why you'd want a Janelli fish or what you'd do with it or something like that. I didn't want it to make it about the giveaway. I wanted to make it a reward for all the people who subscribed and for sticking with me, because I'd rather grow the channel slow and steady.
Yeah.
Than to boom for like a few months and then,
I'm right there with you. I've been on YouTube for 10 years. My first channel is my first channel, and I'm stuck right under 23,000. And a lot of people who've been on YouTube as long as I have like 80, 90, 100,000. But my channel changes with how I change, and every time I go through like a huge life event and my channel changes, I lose people, and that's fine because I feel like my channel is evolving with me. What I've noticed about your channel is when I first got a hold of you on your channel, you only had a couple hundred subscribers. You were just like you were a YouTube baby.
Yes, and I was so anxious.
Yeah.
I didn't edit in the first 6 months or so. I had a much older webcam.
And when you did start editing, you were always apologizing. You're always, I'm sorry, it's not better.
I didn't edit in the beginning, and because of the ADHD and the anxiety, there are long pauses and a lot of ums. But it's how I think.
Have you noticed how much better you are in front of the camera, though? Now that you've been on so long?
Well, after the first 6 months, I realized once you get into editing the video, you have to pay attention to a lot more things.
Yeah, that's true.
So once I started paying more attention and actually doing the journal videos, it really helped. It's helped improve my journaling and my art, but it's helped my confidence. But the big thing is that you realize when you're in front of the camera that it's a lot less nervous. It's a lot less anxious if you look at the camera, which is why I usually have the drink, the coffee. It's hey, I'm sitting across from you at a table. We're chatting. I'm looking at that camera and I'm imagining your face with that camera.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of the camera, you've got your mug you know, the camera isn't a camera, it's you sitting across from me, you know. And I imagine depending on what topic I'm talking about, I imagine different people of my friends sitting across from me, and we're just having coffee and we're chatting.
Yeah, I don't imagine individual people, but I definitely like feel like I'm talking to someone when I'm recording, and I think that evolved over time. I had a little bit of an advantage in that I spent a lot of time in acting and that public speaking, and even though I'm a super shy person, I've trained myself, like when I'm on stage, to put that in the closet, do what I need to do, and then freak out afterwards. But you're right, when you edit, and I noticed this on the podcast, when I edit the video, I hear my patterns, and then I notice I subconsciously change them. So if I have to sit through a video and delete 50 ums, guess what? The next video, I'm not going to have one in there. There are going to be no ums.
I haven't got to that point yet. There's always an There's always an
Well, what we wanted to talk about today is creativity.
Creativity.
And we were talking a little bit about this in your car when we went to go get coffee, that, you know, your channel has really evolved. I hope we aren't really frozen, because that's frozen. Okay, we're not frozen. Your channel has really evolved. When you started, at least when I noticed you on YouTube, it was purely a writing channel. You were working on your novel. And was it during NaNoWriMo?
I started October of 2014 is when I started creating videos on YouTube. So
yeah, and I found you through NaNoWriMo.
It's not been quite, and this October will be 3 years I've been on YouTube.
And then gradually you started bringing in like the journaling, you started bringing in your painting.
I started because there were some people who were subscribed to my channel did other things. Hello. Some people, see, there's always the thumbs down. I can be on for 5 seconds.
It's okay. I get it too. I get it too. I have one person.
Trolls.
I have one person that got mad when I stopped doing lock videos, and I know this is what it is, because the minute I put out a video that said I'm not gonna do lock videos, it was a couple years ago when I started doing fewer of them. Every single video after that, before it even is watched, will have one thumbs down. So I just that first thumbs down, I don't take it personally. Now the second one, it breaks my heart, but the first one, I know who it is.
I don't know who it is. Evidently, I have pissed somebody off, but you know, or whatever. But I'm like, you know, whatever.
But
I look at it and I shake my head. But when I first started, there were a few people that subscribed to the channel, or that I was subscribed to, that did NaNoWriMo, but they also did other things. Like some of them, one lady had a file of facts planner, and she planned all of NaNoWriMo in that file of facts. There were other people who were doing other things, and I started watching videos about other things. Like I like the booktube community for the most part. A lot of it's too young adult for me. Yeah. I like more adult and contemporary.
Do you like Strip Cover Lit?
I do. I like them. I watch them.
Yeah.
They're really good. But I was searching. That's why I started the YouTube channel to begin with. That's why I started creating videos, because there weren't very many people doing videos about NaNoWriMo like that were in even in 10 years. Even 10 years, you know, there weren't very many. I started it in my early 40s. Well, that was 3 years ago.
Every time I find somebody that's 35, I'm like, there's another one.
Right. I'm like, anybody within that 10-year bracket above or below, so 20 years, I'm like, where are they? So I was trying to find anybody who was old, above the age of 20-something.
Yeah.
You know, and so I was like, well, screw it. I'll create my own channel, because there are a lot of us out here who have either retired, or who went to work for part-time, or who have raised their kids and they want to write.
Yeah. It's one of those dreams that never dies.
Me too. I agree, because I'll be 45 on July 30th. I will be 50 on July 23rd, Vixen. Happy birthday early. But so as I started watching other videos, I tried the file effects. I don't like ring down anything.
Really?
I tried a lot of different things, and the more I've always journaled. So I started seeing journal videos. I'm like, people talk about their journals on YouTube? You know, I'm like, aren't they private?
I stumbled onto that, and I was like, really?
I'm like, they're private. How can you show, you know, but you can talk about, I mean, even if you do diary style journaling, you can talk about the different brands of notebooks that you like, or the different pens that you like,
or what you do when
like.
you're not feeling
Right.
like you want to journal that particular day.
When you're in a slump. Then I started seeing Hobonichi videos and Fobonichi videos, and people were doing, I've always kept a journal while writing about what I'm writing, like how many words I got, or why I didn't feel like writing, what prompts me to be in a slump, like what's happening when I get in that slump. You know, like if I'm having a really good day and I'm writing, what happened that day? Why
was that a good day?
What was different compared to the day where I had a really bad day? I may not be your target audience since I've just turned 30.
Hey, that's you count. You count.
That's okay. I just need. I knew there was a need for another voice.
Yeah.
That was from a different perspective. If you get a whole lot of the same kinds of voices, all of BookTube about young adult, or all of the writing people, all of WriterTube or AuthorTube or whatever you want to call it, are in the college, or they're in graduate school, or they're in their late 20s, or they're 30 something. If you have only one niche, then you don't get enough perspectives.
I'm actually seeing recently in the beauty community, because I admit I'm addicted to beauty videos.
Yes, there's the one.
There are several women over the age of 50 that are stunning, that give such good advice. They have amazing skincare. Their skin looks fantastic. I'm talking a blonde woman who's like 60 who looks like she's 40, and blondes usually don't age well.
Yes, I like
she's amazing.
I like the one lady, and she's been really upfront. She has a few crow's lines. But she says she refuses to do surgery. I can't remember her name.
I know who you're talking about.
She wants to age well, and so she's finding things to help her age well. She doesn't just talk about beauty. She talks about skincare, and she talks about drinking a lot of water. She gets into a lot of things, and I think that's important.
Yeah, and what I'm noticing on those channels is, I mean, they went onto YouTube thinking that their audience was going to be women in their age bracket, which it is for the most part. But they're finding a lot of 19, 20, 21-year-olds watching their videos in order to learn how to age well, so that they can start early.
They need to start early.
And I'm noticing, like, when I started my BookTube channel, a lot of the people that watch my BookTube channel are not in my age group. They are younger, and they're taking advantage of my experience, and things like the fact that I quit writing for 10 years and it drove me crazy. Like, that's something that I can look at a younger person and explain how that actually affected me, so that when they're choosing their major and they're thinking, well, maybe I should just give it up entirely, they can have a little bit of foresight that, no, it doesn't work. An artist without a medium is nuts.
I quit writing fiction for a long time. I quit art for an even longer time.
Yeah.
Creative pursuits boiled down to making scrapbooks and photo albums, doing some do-it-yourself projects every now and again, and coloring with my kids and stuff like that. Mostly they were kid kind of projects for a long time. And I realized later, after I started the YouTube channel and I got back into NaNoWriMo, and that was thanks to Mr. Rockstar pushing me to, you can do this, you can do this. While you've got the time, do it.
Yeah. He's so supportive of you.
He is. When I was on the road with him, we stopped at a truck stop just so I could do a Write Stuff chat. I've got a picture of it from a couple of years ago. I was sitting on a picnic table outside of a truck stop, and I did my phone for the actual Write Stuff part so I could tweet on the phone.
Yeah.
I had to use the data, but I actually did some writing on the computer because I didn't need the internet. You have to pay for the internet at certain truck stops.
Yeah, I know, I paid for it.
So, but I used my phone, and it was hard as hell with the smartphones when you don't have an actual little keyboard.
Yeah, it is.
But I kept my answers really short and sweet. But having that kind of support, from going from having really not very much support at all, one creative thing led to another creative thing, led to another creative thing. And I realized that since high school, I hadn't really, not really, except with my kids, which is pretty much doodling, I hadn't created art. And I loved art. I loved art as much as I loved writing back in school. I wanted to be a journalist. And photography was my art, my main art back then. And I was like, okay, well, I can't draw a face for shit. but I can draw everything else.
Yeah.
I can draw from a reference. I'm never going to be one of those people who creates too much of their own. I mean, I can, but it's more comic-y, cartoony, children kind of stuff rather than adult, you know. But I realized that the more I did other creative things, like we had a ton of do-it-yourself house projects because the house had been empty for so long. Doing all different kinds of creative things made my writing better. It made me want to write more. Sometimes I didn't have enough time for writing, having to do so much. And I find that still now because I'm really busy with all the other stuff that's creative. So sometimes one thing or another will take a little bit of a back seat, but if I can write for 15 minutes a day or 3 hours a day, as long as I can write, it's a good day.
I found something similar. When I quit all art, in high school, I used to draw portraits. I dabbled in painting. I went to art school to study fashion design, and that's when I picked up a camera for the first time. I started learning how to use a camera. I had always written poetry from like middle school on, and then I was nearing the end of my first year of art school, and I went through a traumatic event, and I thought, all artists are crazy, and if I do art, I'm going to be crazy, right? This was my thought process. 18-year-old me, right? So 18-year-old me decides to stop all art. I quit art school. I quit doing photography. I quit painting. I quit poetry. I quit writing, the whole 9 yards. At 19, I attempted to write a novel. I got like 3 chapters in, and then I remembered, oh yeah, that's right, art makes you crazy. So I stopped again. I did not touch anything while my children were small. I didn't. I supported my child. My daughter's an artist, and she's really growing in her art. Like her art has just been growing leaps and bounds in school. But I was really supportive of her doing art. I was supportive of my son doing art, even though he didn't want to do art. But I wasn't supportive of myself doing art. And what I found was it took me going through a bad relationship and getting strong enough to leave that relationship to be strong enough to bring art back into my life. And when I went through NaNoWriMo. I had gone several times and never been able to finish. And when I finished that first one, it was like the floodgates opened. It was like the sense of, oh my goodness, I can actually do this. And that's also when I realized I was saner when I did art. Even though everything tells you if you do art, you're going to be crazy and then you're going to die at 27. That was not the case.
See, I think that, and I've read a lot of books about, I got misdiagnosed with bipolar because when you have ADHD, anxiety, and depression, depending on, it can, if you get medicine, they can counteract, and one thing can get worse and the other thing can go out of whack. And so it's hard to find a balance.
Yeah.
But I got misdiagnosed because I don't have the kind of ADHD where I'm literally jumping off the walls like my brother did. I'm a fidgeter.
Yeah.
I'm a mover. When I get super stressed out, like anxious and upset, I have to do.
Yeah.
I have to get busy and do something physical.
Up until recently, girls never were diagnosed.
If my mind races, my best outlet is to either draw or write, or to get busy physically and to do something physically like clean or cook or garden or something. Walk. I do a lot of walking. Not as much as you lately, but somebody said that we need a creative outlet, and we do need a creative outlet. The more you create, no matter what outlet it is, the more creative you are.
Yeah.
We were talking about this earlier, about you find sometimes what you think is your thing
may not actually
be your thing. I love fiction. I absolutely love fiction, and I will finish the 3 books I have. Eventually, I will finish them. But I'm leaning more and more and more towards like elementary school or middle school grade, like maybe an illustrated book for a kid.
I can see you being in a book illustrator.
And I would also like to write a book about creativity, a nonfiction book about creativity, about being a creative person and how to stay motivated and inspired as a creative person, no matter what your creative endeavor is. And how, like you said, being creative, there's something about it. It's the same thing I feel no matter whether I'm putting pen to paper or I'm planting roses in a garden or I'm doing something in the house like painting these walls or I'm decorating the journal page or I'm listening to Mr. Rockstar and he's playing the guitar and singing. Whatever it is, there's something about creativity.
Well, I can tell you, creativity is what makes us human. when we were cavemen, one of the first things we did after we fulfilled our Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we got ourselves a cave, we've got fire, we have sex. What is the first thing we do? We start drawing on the walls. Okay? This is something we did as a human species. It's something children do. You see little kids drawing on their jeans. Like, that is a thing.
Their hands.
Yeah, drawing everywhere. And it's just, it's something that when we are creative, it brings us back to what it means to be human. For me, my biggest support, you're lucky, you have Rockstar. I'm lucky I have my children. My kids are completely supportive. I am asked, especially now that I'm hitchhiking, I am asked at least once a day, what do my kids think of what I'm doing? Okay. My kids think I'm crazy. They think it's awesome. They said that I'm not allowed to die in a stupid way, but if I die in an awesome way, that's cool. So I can't die crossing the street, but I can die trying to get my butt up Mount Everest.
There you go.
My daughter, when I published my 4 short stories last year, I self-published them because the project was driving me crazy and I wanted them off my plate. When I self-published them, she did all those covers. She drew them.
That's amazing.
And she was so supportive of me. And when I got my first sale, she was like, Mommy, yay! You know, and when I got my first review, yay, I'm so proud of you. And it's really awesome because as a parent, you raise your kids and they're growing up and you're like, good job this whole time. And then to have your kids do that to you, and they use the same tone that I used on them when they were small, it's really sweet.
My son did some research for me because I was talking to him about some things, and he's much more tech savvy than I am. When he was living with me, he helped me with some things. And then my daughter, who is an artist, when I very first started getting into the journaling thing, it was my daughter Maria who gave me Prismacolor pencils. She had a couple of extra different sets. One was a watercolor set, the little 12 count, and she gave me a little 12 count of Prismacolor very thin pencils.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
She said, Mom, you can go to Walmart. She said, go to Walmart, go to Michael's. She said, Michael's has coupons. She said, go and get you one thing every other week. She said, figure out what you like. She said, but if you have questions, I can answer some of the questions for you, or you can look it up. And she said, all you do is go on YouTube or go on Google. But she gave me a lot of pointers in the right direction. She's more of a sketcher and illustrator. She's amazing, and she's amazing at color.
Yeah, she is.
She's amazing at color. But her thing, she's like, okay, now it's backwards. Growing up, you were all like helping us, and we're coloring, and you're doing all this. She was like, and now, well, she's a welder, so she can do and does do on occasion creative stuff. She creates paintings and drawings and illustrations for people on a part-time basis when it arises, when she has time, and she sells her work sometimes. But her main job is a welder, and she's a single parent, so she's super busy now. So we're and she's like, you are like on YouTube and making art journal video, art. My mom is doing art. You didn't even do art.
Yeah.
And she's like, how come I never knew you were this good?
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I was, but I was stagnant.
Yeah.
I had gotten in limbo, and that part of me was numb. Yeah. And the only time it ever really came out was I'd be sitting on the floor with the kids with crayons and a coloring book, and I'm telling the kids, it's okay to color outside the lines. If you don't like that picture, make it your own.
Yeah.
And I'm still, my big thing with the journaling, with anything, is make it your own. Who says you have to do one genre?
Yeah.
Who says you have to do one medium? Who says you can only have one notebook? Who says you can't put planning in your art journal? Who says?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no law. Stephen King, James Patterson, Nora Roberts, all kinds of people have crossed genres. They're doing multiple. You could be like Jane Krantz and have pen names, or Nora Roberts, who has the J.D. Robb thing, and Stephen King did the Bachman thing once upon a time. But honestly, if your thing is whatever it is you're really passionate about, that's what you're going to do the best at.
So my question for you is, when you started YouTube and you were mostly talking about writing, and gradually you brought in these other things, and when was it that you realized that your passion may not actually be writing, but it may be creativity itself?
In the last few months.
Okay.
Actually,
what was it that did that for you?
I was doing a video, a coffee chat, and I did a couple of coffee chats about issues that were important that were going on with me. So I did some research. I did a video about self-doubt. I did a video about creativity and being inspired and motivated, about procrastination. So I'll research how to get past whatever it is, you know. And I was having trouble. This Camp NaNoWriMo was the roughest for me since my very first.
Oh, wow.
Since my first NaNoWriMo back to writing. Okay. You know, when I very first attempted, I didn't get through it. You know what I'm saying? So, and that was many years ago. This Camp NaNoWriMo was rough because I had Patreon and YouTube, and I was trying to get the website going again, the blogging. I had the Facebook groups. So I'm doing this journaling stuff, and then I was sick for 2 months right before Camp NaNoWriMo. That's rough. I had the stomach flu, and then I had the regular flu, and then I got the stomach flu again. So being sick, you know, physically led to, and stressed out because it led to anxiety and depression. The depression is not good for creativity. Journaling is what helps me stay sane. It helps keep me from being so anxious and so depressed. It doesn't get rid of it. Nothing gets rid of it.
Yeah.
But journaling and creativity, not just a journal, creativity in general is my medicine. Yeah. It's my therapy. I don't take medicine for it anymore because they counteract each other, and they just make some of the symptoms for each one worse. They might make a few things better, but then they make other things worse. So it's a hard mix. It's a really hard mix. So over the last couple, since right before, in March, the idea started. It was percolating. It was brewing. April, I was in panic mode. Yeah. I was in panic mode. I had days where I didn't write at all. Then I had days where I wrote. I had days where I was in the zone and I'm writing and doing really good. I was doing really good when I was putting pen to paper. I had a really hard time not having the laptop. Yeah. That made the last 2 NaNoWriMo events, NaNoWriMo and then the camp, that made it even more difficult. So there were a lot of different factors. And then I got to the point where at the end of April, I was like, you know, maybe this is just, maybe I need to take a break. Not a break from writing, but a break from being so, yeah. You know, maybe it's time for me to skip a NaNoWriMo event. Yeah. Maybe it's time for me to reevaluate where my goals are at really with writing. So all of May, I've been doing creativity projects, videos, blog posts, ideas about starting projects, about creativity in general. For the whole, actually for April and May, it's been all about creativity.
And it just seemed to click for you.
And the last few weeks, especially, I did a video about it, and Patreon talked to a couple people about it. And you know, I kept thinking, I don't really belong on Patreon in the beginning. People were like, you should do, and I'm like, I don't really belong on Patreon. I'm just a jack of all trades with creativity. I dabble in a whole lot of things. I'm just a creative person. Yeah. And they're like, that is your niche. Yeah, that is, you inspire.
And it's an important niche.
You inspire and motivate people to be creative. Yeah. And I didn't get it. I'm like, I wouldn't want, why?
How could you not get it, given how many times you tried to go through? I don't even know. Did you ever get through The Artist's Way?
I got through The Artist's Way 2 full times and a half a time, and I'm about to start it Sunday.
So this book is all about creativity.
No, I'm starting it on the 1st of June.
So here's this book all about creativity that can be used regardless of what your medium is.
Finding Water is the one I couldn't get there.
Oh, that was the one.
It's too much it's too much like The Artist's Way. I think my problem is she's too much of her blah 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 in the book. Yeah. I like the things that you do, the exercises and the things for you to think about, but it's too much. I didn't mind some of the personal stuff in The Artist's Way, but it's too much of the same thing in Finding Water.
When I look at you, I see that book embodied in a human being. Okay.
My face is going to turn red.
Sorry. But, you know, when you say, oh, I do everything. Well,
everything but music, and that's Mr. Rockstar's job.
You know, you live an artistic life. And that is an important distinction. I mean, there are artists, and then there are people that live an artistic life.
I didn't always, though. I was in banking and finance.
Yeah.
I was in accounting.
All of us take breaks, but eventually it comes back and
I
bites
was
us
in
in
the
butt.
complete opposite. I was going to college to be an English major.
Yeah.
I was majoring in written communications.
But like I said, if you're meant to do something, even if you fight against it, eventually it's going to sneak up and bite you in the butt. And it's going to make it happen. And you were meant to lead an artist's life.
My Patreons are who kept pushing me. Once I finally opened Patreon, when I finally got on Patreon, and I'm like going through this, and I'm like, why am I here again? You know, why are you do you even want me on here? Because it didn't really make sense to me.
Yeah.
You know, there's 101 people you can watch free on YouTube who make videos about journaling with me and planning with me.
But they do it because you inspire them, and because they like you as a human being. They want to support you in your art. They have their own reasons.
A couple of them said the same thing that you said earlier. You're not afraid to show the mistakes and what does and doesn't work for you, and that you try different things until something does work, and you're willing to get rid of things and try other things, and that sometimes it's okay to say, hey, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, or hey, I'm not very good at this, let me try a little harder, or let me figure out a different way to do it. Because not everybody likes watercolor. Not everybody likes romance. Not everybody likes, it'll come to me in a second, suspense, horror. There's all kinds of things. So what one person writes, like some of us really like literary fiction, but we also like contemporary fiction. And nobody can say, well, you can only choose one.
Yeah.
Because I'll be damned if somebody can tell me, well, you can't, if you're reading the classics, you can't read contemporary fiction.
Well, the thing is,
or if you're reading contemporary fiction, you can't be smart enough to read literary fiction.
The thing is, a lot of contemporary fiction is actually literary fiction, which is really funny. A lot of people don't realize that. If you look at, when people think of literary fiction, they think of the classics, because that's what you're taught in high school. Most people have a really bad experience with that, and that's why they shy away from it. But most modern literary fiction, it could be classified as contemporary fiction. What makes it literary is that it breaks out of what's expected of the genre. And usually I hate to say this because we like to pretend this doesn't exist, but after doing Literary Roadhouse for 2 years and reading a lot of literary short stories, I have to say there is a quality issue. So you find a lot of fiction that is in a genre that pushes its genre to the edge, that the writing raises it up a level, and then you'll find it starting to be considered literary fiction. And I don't like to say that out loud because all my genre peeps get mad at me, but having read over, I think in the last 2 years, I've read 300 short stories, literary fiction, short stories, and I'm getting to the point now where I think I finally understand what makes literary fiction. I also, like you, I started with one thing, and my writing has changed. I kept writing. I was lucky in the fact that the first thing that I started doing was what I ended up doing. I'll just ignore the poetry phase because I was a teenager and everybody does that, right? But what I noticed is the very first novel that I attempted to finish, well, very first novel that I didn't finish was kind of like edgy, not train spotting, but kind of that feel. You know, I was a stripper at the time. I was writing about a bunch of strippers, and it was like lots of curse words and whatever. I was 18, forgive me. So the first novel I completed, I had been reading a lot of what's available online about fiction, which is primarily about genre fiction. So I plotted my novel in the way that genre fiction is typically plotted. I started writing this book. I get it all done, and I'm reading it, and it doesn't work. I can't figure out why. So I set it aside, and I write my second novel, and that's when I discovered I'm a literary writer, which creates a problem, because now, you know, if you write romance and you write your book, you revise it, and it's good, you send it out, or you self-publish it. Literary fiction, literary readers expect a certain level of quality, and so if I do that, I'll get slammed, and they'll never touch anything else I ever write again. And so all of a sudden, I realized that my taste and my skill set, there's a big gap between the two. The gap is narrowing, and then it stops narrowing, and then it just goes up, and then it narrows, and it goes up. And so I went from trying to write what I thought was a typical contemporary fiction genre book, and after writing my second novel, realizing I'm a literary author, reading a ton of short stories, writing my short stories, I went back and looked at it, and it's a tragedy. It's a Greek tragedy. I did not know. So I had tried to write a Greek tragedy, but I had plotted it as if it was a contemporary genre novel, and that's why it didn't work.
Yeah.
That's why it didn't work. So like you, everything's changed. And what was interesting is I was not a short story person. I didn't read short stories, didn't write short stories. I hated short stories, could not get me to read
high
short
school
stories.
I was a big short story person.
I was not.
In high school I was in they call it different things now, but I was in the level where you can't go any higher. But when I was in high school, even you didn't get any college credits. It was just the highest level.
Yeah, it was honors.
So when in the South, and they don't always, but they call it honors now, but sometimes they call it AP, which is,
well, AP is the one where you take the test and you get college credit.
right, but they didn't have that when I was in school.
Yeah, that's new.
But in 8th grade, if you passed the one math course, then you could get a high school credit for it. But anyway, I was all into short stories, and I was really into long poetry.
Mm-hmm.
Alfred J. Prufrock.
The epic poems.
Yes.
Modern
it's
epics.
all about a whore. I measure my life in teaspoons. But when you and I like literary fiction, but I like good literary fiction.
Yeah. That's
if I read a book that's supposed to be literary fiction and it's bland and boring, I'm not gonna finish it. Yeah. I don't care who says it won this many whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
But see, I'm also one of those people that when I read some authors who are more contemporary fiction, and I read their words, and their words read like poetry, and I am pulled into that story, and it's deep and it's real, like Stephen King. And I'm just going to use him because he's like my big favorite. But there are a lot of other ones out there who write contemporary fiction, but their quality.
I would say old Stephen King definitely is short literary fiction.
Yeah.
His newer stuff not so much, but old
I'm not
Stephen
a big
King,
fan of the Bill Hodges.
I think a lot of the horror writers actually do tend to lean more towards literary fiction. I don't know what that is. I think because it's a smaller genre and because the people, I mean, the original horror novels were literary fiction novels, and I think that they've kept
horror
those
novels have to throw you into the middle.
Yeah.
Seriously, deep into the middle. They have to, for most people who read horror, it needs to somewhat scare you. It needs to make you think. It needs to make you wonder what's around the next.
That's what I love. It's a queasy feeling.
What's a good suspense mystery will do the same thing. What's around the next corner? What's about to happen?
Yeah. See, I never read short stories in school. We were reading novels in school. The first thing I ever tried to write was a novel. It was all about poetry and novels. And then when I looked at past and I realized I didn't know how to revise, and there was no way I was going to learn how to revise on a 300-page book, I started writing short stories specifically to learn how to revise my novel. And then I realized that I didn't know enough about short stories to do that. So I started the podcast in order to force myself to read short stories because I hated short stories. I didn't want to read them. And then I started reading them. And I learned how to read short stories. I learned how to appreciate short stories.
It's hard to write a short story.
Short stories, Stephen King said this once. He said that short stories are the pinnacle of writing, which in essence means that the very best short story will always be better than the very best novel.
Mm-hmm.
And the level of writing that's required, the level of succinctness, the level of nuance, characterization that is required to write an effective short story is really high. And even now, last week, we read a short story where I said, if I'd read this story 2 years ago, I would have hated it. But now I know how to appreciate those short stories, which has moved on to how I appreciate novels. When I realized I was a literary fiction novelist, I wanted to make a point to not write one of those quote-unquote boring novels. I wanted to write one that had a plot and had characters and wasn't just about ideas. And I said that very snobby ways. Yes, we are in the same room.
Okay, for those of you who joined a little late, Maya is doing a walkabout.
I have been hitchhiking since Austin, and I am now.
She came from Florida to Savannah, Georgia, and she is in South Carolina visiting me. And then she is headed from South Carolina to North Carolina.
And from there, who knows? I'm thinking maybe Denver. Yeah, I've got 3 more weeks before I have to be back, so I'm going to make use of it. So where was I?
Short stories.
Short stories. So what was I saying about short stories?
300 pages.
So yeah, I realized I couldn't learn on that, and I started reading these short stories. I started reading good short stories, amazing short stories, and now when I read one of those quote unquote boring novels, they're not always boring because I can see them in a different way.
It depends. I read.
I mean, there are some that are horrible.
Miguel Garcia, whatever, I can't his whole name.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of his books
Well of Loneliness
is friggin' off the chain, and the other book, I've had it, and I've started it, and I've started it, and I've started it, and I've started it, and I have yet to get through it.
Yeah.
And I've had that book for like 10 years.
And the thing is, you can be a good book and just not be for you. But what I will say is, what I define a good book as has changed. And I've also discovered that I now get really angry if a book goes on too long. It's made it really hard because contemporary books tend to go long because that's what's commercial. But when I read a really long book, a lot of times I'm reading a lot of fluff and a lot of filler.
But they tell you you don't want to go over 80. You don't want to go over 80,000 words. But you've got books that people are coming out with that are like 100 and something thousand words first book.
Especially in certain genres like fantasy. Fantasy, it's expected. No one's going to look at you under 100,000 in fantasy because the readers will be mad. But a lot of The Handmaid's Tale is short.
I love The Handmaid's Tale.
It's short.
On this book, the show. I read the book a long time ago. For example, Robert Jordan. I loved the first few books. I'm a fantasy. I like fantasy. I like sci-fi. I like suspense, mystery. I like historical romance. And every once in a while, I like a cheesy romance.
Yeah.
But I have to be in the mood. But I love a good story. It doesn't matter. I like storytellers.
Yeah. See, that's where I've changed. I no longer am satisfied by just a good story.
But I don't want a bunch of flowery, poetic, purple prose. I want a real chunk of meat story. I want a story that I am digging my feet in.
I feel you.
Because I have to put the book down. And it doesn't matter what kind of book it is or what genre it is, but Robert Jordan towards the end, it was getting redundant.
Yeah.
They were too long. And
that's why I stopped reading Stephen King. And I wasn't even reading literary novels at that point. I just stopped because his novels got too big. He got big enough for his britches that he could tell his editor to shove it, and his editor shut up, and his books suffered because of it. Old Stephen King was much tighter writer. What I will say is a lot of my favorite books are now under 300 pages. I find a lot of books around 250 pages tend to be much tighter.
I like the shorter version of The Stand better than the longer version, which is most people disagree. They like the uncut version. But I like, I have the paperback. I like the shorter version of The Stand.
You know, it's funny when you read On Writing, he has all these rules about adverbs and stuff, and he breaks all of his own rules. I'm like, do you need to read On Writing?
Okay, so we've got people, yes, just got here. I'll no doubt be re-listening tonight. Yes, in the same room. Okay, Jen said earlier that she makes her job in accounting creative, that she finds ways to be creative. And Vixen said that she uses Michael's coupon. She's addicted.
I love that. You find ways to be creative in accounting. Now, I know how you meant that.
But that's like an oxymoron.
No, because there are a lot of accountants that are very creative. I don't think she meant it that way. I'm so bad.
It's time for me to open that bottle of wine now.
I think so. So yeah, what I will say is, you know, my reading has changed. The more I read, the more picky I am. I recently read The Girl with All the Gifts. Have you read it?
Mm-hmm. I need to read it.
That book, everyone praised it.
I watched your review.
Everyone praised it. Everyone praised it. And it's an amazing story. You probably would like it because it is a really good story. But I noticed that I wasn't enjoying it because the writing wasn't there for me. I've just gotten so picky. It's hard for me to finish books now. I put them down. I get mad when I read a book. I can tolerate a book that I don't enjoy or is just bad, much better than a book that is almost good. Like a book that is so close. I'm just like, you just like a hair. And I want to take the author aside and be like, come here. Let me talk to you a little bit for a minute here.
See, I don't find, okay, Heidi says I've never been able to get into Stephen King. He's just much too dry for me. I do enjoy a book that can make me laugh or cry. Yeah. I used to be a big James Patterson fan in the beginning. For the last, I don't know, I haven't read very many of his books lately because they're too, he's getting them out too quick. John Sanford, however, I have, see all the John Sanford books I have over there, and some of them are missing. John Sanford, however, I love. Like, and that's more suspense. I used to love Patricia Cornwell, but lately she's getting the purpley prose, and she's talking about the highfalutin, more about what Scarpetta's wearing and what she's driving and different things like that than the actual real, what the meat of the story is supposed to be about, as far as I'm concerned. But some authors get to a point and their writing changes, or they get too big for their britches. I think it depends. Like, if I used to spend my free time with my head buried in a book, and it was my escape. Yeah. I've been that way since elementary school. It's the same thing with journaling. That was my saving grace, reading and journaling. So when I can get into a story and it takes me out of my own head and into that story, it's a good book. Yeah. Okay. If I am staying in my racing thoughts, anxiety, depression, ADHD ridden head, not a good book for me. That doesn't mean it's not a good book.
Yeah, it's just not a good book for you. And I think that's really interesting because I used to be like that. I used to read a book a day from middle school all the way through high school. I was an escapist reader. I wanted to read things that made me forget where I was, forget who I was, forget my life. And those were what I considered good books.
Cheryl said, I thought, wow, Burgess is really making that split screen work with her eye line there.
That's funny. And so what's changed for me is I'm no longer an escapist reader. It takes a lot for me to forget where I am and read. In a book, Let Me In was the last one that did that for me. I now am a very analytical reader. See, and I pick out details and I chew on them. I find them juicy.
I have tried for the past, I don't know how long, to read a book like a writer. Yeah. Instead of reading a book as a reader, I can't read a book as a writer.
Do not strive for that. It will ruin it for you. And it will ruin movies too. It sucks.
No, I can do movies like The Hero's Journey and stuff like that. Movies, I'll pick it out and I'm like, what in the hell are they thinking?
Yeah. For a long time, I fought it. I did not like the fact that I was now reading like a writer. I really did not like it. It made it so that books that I would have enjoyed in the past, I no longer enjoy. It definitely made me afraid to reread some of my favorite books. But then recently I had the experience of reading White Light. And that book changed who I am as a writer. I actually met the author when I was down in Florida, and we hung out in her place. And she gave me a private showing of her paintings, which was amazing. That's so cool. Yeah, it was totally cool. And she's awesome. And she's definitely somebody that I would now consider a friend. But I read that book and it blew me away. And I realized I was blown away, and I was still reading it like a writer. Like, it didn't take away from my enjoyment. And as I was reading, there were things that she was doing, and I was noticing them, and I was like, wow, it's amazing. Wow. And certain ways she would use language, I felt like almost like I was chewing on it. Like when I used to read Virginia Woolf, you have to read Virginia Woolf out loud or else you have no idea what you're reading. And sometimes you read some of her sentences and it feels like you're chewing on a meaty meal. And that's how I felt reading parts of this book. And once I had that experience, I realized that I can read like a writer and still love it.
I'm going to show you. There's a book. It's still one of my favorite books.
Okay, Burgess is pulling something off the bookcase, and I am narrating it for YouTube because you guys can't see. But she's probably too short to reach it.
I am not too fucking short to reach it.
Now, this book helped inspire, whoa. This book right here helped inspire my second book, the one I'm working on. This was part of what inspired Past. I'm like, what all did you get? Ooh, you know what? I have never read a Kurt Vonnegut novel.
Oh my God,
I've only read his short stories.
I have a few of them.
His short stories are amazing.
Okay, you know, the movie came out about this.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the movie before I read the book, which is rare. But I read the book and I was like, the movie did not do it justice.
Yeah.
Okay, but these, see, to me, this came out, and it was, when it came out, it was more contemporary fiction. But to me, this is literary fiction.
Yeah, it's classified as literary fiction
now, but when it first came out,
it was marketed as contemporary fiction, but it was still considered literary fiction.
Kurt Vonnegut is considered literary fiction, but to me, he's both.
He's a genre writer that rose to literary fiction, definitely.
This will make you cry, and it is.
Okay, so who was it that likes books that make them cry? This is the one you should read.
It's serious. I don't know if it is or isn't literary fiction, but
it's literary.
It's on the list for schools to read.
Actually, I don't think this is fiction. Wasn't this a true story?
Yeah, it's based on a true story.
Yeah, this is creative nonfiction.
But this book, anytime a book can make me think, Beloved made me think.
Yeah.
That's why I pulled these specific books. This one made me think. I think this is actually based on a true story.
And those are the kind of books I like. I like books that when I'm done reading it, I'm thinking. Story.
Now, I know I don't think Kurt Vonnegut, I don't think that at all Slaughterhouse-Five, but
I need to read Slaughterhouse-Five. Adrian just like
it's sort of a cross between sci-fi and fantasy, and it's like a bunch of it touches on a bunch of different. But this book and George Orwell, and I don't have my I got George Orwell's 1984 in 1984, and somebody took my book. I read it. I read it the beginning of my senior year of high school, or the end of my junior year of high school. I read the book in 1984, and I had the paperback, so I've got to get another one. But George Orwell's book back then made me think, and I read an ebook of it, and I was like, I want the paperback. I want the book, because it's one of those books that is timeless. It doesn't matter whether I read it in 84 or I read it in 2040. You know, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But to me, every single one of these, to me, is literary fiction.
Yeah, they are.
But crosses lines that I think.
But that's part of what makes it literary fiction, and I think that's where people get confused. They think literary fiction is it's a bunch of books about themes where nothing happens. But actually, what makes something literary fiction is that it does cross lines. It does push the lines. It's approaching whatever genre it could be considered at in a new and novel way. And a lot of the best and the most creative of any genre are actually considered literary fiction. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And that's one of the reasons why we did the podcast. Like, quite frankly, we started Literary Roadhouse because so many people have a bad view of what literary fiction is. They had a bad experience in high school. They don't read literary fiction. They avoid it like it's a plague. And the whole idea of that podcast was to start with short stories because it's less intimidating, and to approach literary fiction on just a top basic level and gradually delve deeper and deeper into the stories until we understand what literary fiction is and we can learn to appreciate it.
I think some of that crosses into, it's like saying artist with a capital A or artist with a small a. Writer with a capital W or with a small W.
See, I don't think genre writers are
not genre writers, just create, so. When it comes, there's this thing that people think, well, I can only do this, or well, if I write literary fiction, I can't do this, or if I write contemporary fiction, I can't write literary fiction, or if I doodle in my journal, I'm not a serious artist. If I'm a good watercolor, if I'm a good like doodler, if I write and I doodle, maybe that's not real journaling. Whatever, there's like this thing that says you can only do this, and you there's no rules.
Yeah,
there's no rules. Crossing boundaries and borders. Who put the borders and the boundaries?
Yeah, I will say crossing those borders and boundaries is why I love literary fiction so much. Various genres have very distinct rules that you do have to adhere to. or else the audience gets angry. Well, yeah, but I'm talking about commercial genre fiction. It has very specific rules. And like with poetry, those rules, you will find some of the best writers within genres, because when you are forced to have rules around your art, you become more creative within those rules. Like poetry, for example, you see poets. When I went to a writer's workshop, and we had a whole poetry track, and they were all writing really contemporary, modern poetry. And several of the best of them, I talked to them, and they said that for practice, they would write quatrains, they would write sonnets, they would self-impose rules around their writing to force themselves to be more creative within those rules. Now, those types of poems are not popular, so the stuff that they would write for publication would be contemporary, but it was better because they had the practice.
Yeah, I think when you do that yourself, it's fine. But at the same time, practicing with anything, if you step outside of your comfort zone, I'm not talking about, like, I guess when I read a book, if I were like the book I'm writing, I got stymied with the, okay, what genre is it?
Yeah, we don't need to think about that when we just get started.
Because, well, people ask you, well, what is it? And I'm like, okay, well, it's a witch, so it's supernatural, it's paranormal. It's got some love story, so it's a love story. But it's more of like a little tiny bit of suspense and maybe a little bit of mystery, but I guess maybe it's contemporary fiction, paranormal.
Yeah, that's something a new writer should not have to worry about. And unfortunately, that is one of the first things people ask you. But you have to, because
there are quote unquote rules.
But why? Why do you have to? When someone walks up to you and says, "What's your book about?" They're a reader. They're not a publisher. They're asking you what your book is about. They don't necessarily want to hear, well, it's a paranormal romance with werewolves. They want to hear it's about a girl that went to the mall and she runs into a werewolf and falls in love with them. Like the average person that asks you, we as writers, I think we put ourselves in these situations a lot.
Writers do it to each other too.
Writers do it to each other, but when writers do it to each other, at least you can say, you know what, I'm not talking about it right now. It's still in process.
Or sometimes they're just curious, and sometimes it's not. They're not doing it to like.
But when a writer does that, like with Past, for a long time, people would ask me what genre it was, and I would tell them I wasn't sure, and they were cool with that.
Well, see, I don't care what genre it is. I just want to know what it's about. Am I gonna like it?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a good story? Am I going to want to read it and keep reading it?
Yeah, that's where your elevator pitch, your one-sentence summary comes in.
Yeah. So
I start my books with one-sentence summaries, and so that's easy for me. That's the first thing I write is my one-sentence summary.
I write a paragraph, and then I condense my paragraph to like 3 sentences, and then I take that 3 sentences, and then I go down to 1 sentence.
Yeah.
And you know where I got that from? When you started doing those friggin' long-ass videos with the snowflake method.
That was like 24 hours of video. Do you know that? Unfortunately, it's no longer available online. But if you're one of my patrons, yeah, if you're one of my patrons, it is actually a patron perk. Yeah, so those videos did not get deleted. But yeah, that was some serious. I can't believe I recorded that and people watched it.
You know why?
I know people that watch the whole thing.
You know why? I watched the whole thing. Sometimes I had to watch it in sections, but I watched the whole thing. And here's the thing. It's the same reason, and this is how I realized. It's the same reason that people like to watch when I put together a whole journal page. When my page goes from looking like yesterday's page, which is not finished, when it goes from being a blank page to this page to being a finished page, how did I get from A to B to D to, so how did you get there? What made you? And if you got confused or you got like, what, I don't know what, but you were honest about doing your outline. So if you got stuck somewhere, you're like, and you could see the frustration, but then you could see how you got through it, how you worked through it. And then it gives other people that, oh, well, I can do it.
Yeah. At least a couple times, at least a couple, like once a month, I get somebody that's like, hey, do you still have those videos up? I'm like, you remember that? That was like 3 years ago.
And it wasn't like, it had nothing to do with the quality. Random, my favorite keeper is pomegranate. Blueberry's good, and 2 together. Blueberry, pomegranate's the one.
Yes.
I told you, so good. I'm drinking Dr. Pepper.
I got cherry.
But I got wine for later. Mr. Rockstar's cooking steaks on the grill, y'all. So, but when I got through like each one of your videos, because sometimes I'd have to pause, and then I'm thinking, and I'd write something down, and I'm like, oh wow, you know, because I struggled. I went from just when I was in high school writing short stories, even I could just put them on the page. I was that in tune with my writing and how it worked, but then you take a long break from it, and then you start to question how you are as a writer, whether your writing's good enough, whether, you know, you get lost in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't write anything that way anymore. I forget who it was. It might have been Alice Munro, maybe not. There was a writer who said, you know, when you're writing your story, I was confused on endings, and this was specifically about endings, that your first idea for the ending is never the best idea. That you have to get back through the bad ideas to find the good idea. And so now, even when I'm writing short stories, I can write a 500-word short story. I will probably have 300 words. When my hubby comes home with steaks in the meat market. So I can be writing a 500-word short story, and I will have 3 pages of outline for that 500-word short story. And I will go through every version of middle and end and compare them and just figure out which one actually makes the best story. And I think that's the difference between a storyteller and a writer. I think a lot of really good writers are amazing storytellers, but they focus on the craft of story mostly, instead of the craft of writing.
I needed to learn the craft of story.
I think the craft of story is much easier.
To kind of align my thinking. Because of the ADHD, I had to kind of go, okay, in order to get to here, my character needs to go through some things.
Yeah.
You know, she's got to have some conflict. It can't be perfect. People, and I'm one of those, I'm very upset with the Game of Thrones. Ned should never have been killed.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I've never watched or read
book series.
Yeah, I know what it is. I've just never watched or read.
Okay, well, it's a tragedy all the way around.
Yeah, I know everybody dies.
But so I had to figure out, like, because if it were up to me, my character, I wouldn't kill off any of my pretties except the one bitch or the one bastard, you know, and he's gonna have, it's gonna be poetic justice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but so you have to have bad things happen to your characters. It can't all be happy, you know.
I think if someone wants to be a writer and they want to do well financially, focusing on the craft of storytelling is actually a much more marketable skill. There are many more people that will read an amazing story that maybe is not as well written than there are people that will read an amazingly written book that maybe doesn't have the best story. And I think that's just, it didn't used to be that way. I think that's just a trend line.
Lovecraft just came to mind.
Yeah, I think that's a trend line of what's happening. And so anyone that is a new writer that wants to be published and live off their writing and be successful or self-published, learning the craft of storytelling is actually a much more marketable skill. And unfortunately, that's not where my first love is. My first love is the craft of writing. So I am one of these writers that will get stuck for 2 weeks on a sentence because I'm pulling one word in and out, in and out.
I'm the opposite. I mean, I will or I won't one day publish my books. I'm going to write them. I'm going to edit them. I'm going to get the story, and some people are going to read them. And if it makes 1 or 10 or 10,000 people happy because they thought it was a good book, I'm good with that. If I make a whole chunk of change, great. If I make a little tiny bit of chunk of change and it pays for what I put into it, I'm okay with that. For me, it's about the storytelling. It's about getting my words on the paper.
But that actually is more marketable. You know, for me, storytelling is not my first love. It takes me forever to get through a writing book that focuses on storytelling. I find them boring and obnoxious. I find most of the forms of storytelling to be annoying. And so that is not my strong point. But I will say, literary authors who love storytelling are the literary authors who actually do well.
Are there any YouTubers that are crime fiction writers on here?
I've never read crime fiction.
And you know any YouTubers who do?
Not YouTubers. My co-host on my podcast writes crime fiction. I think he would call them mysteries. Yeah. But they're crime fiction. I don't know anybody on here that does.
Actually, the book that I've been writing has a touch of that, but it has a touch of a lot of.
I have a thriller book that's been in the back of my head forever that really pushes some lines, and I want to write it, but I am in no way ready to deal with the repercussions of writing that book. And I think that would probably qualify as crime fiction.
Ambi said she's a storyteller. Are you? Sure, but I would bet there are. I bet there are some.
I'm sure there's got to be. It's such a big genre.
Well, see, but here's the thing, and this is what I was bringing up earlier. There are some books that cross genres, like some songs cross genres. You know, they're gnats. It's bugging the crap out of me. There some you can't, like, I would say that the one book I'm writing definitely has some of that suspense mystery to it, but the whole book isn't in that.
It's not in the genre, but it has genre elements.
The rules. It's not going to follow Sue Grafton or.
It's not going to have the dead body on the first page. No.
Actually, it's going to have the grandmother dying in the prologue.
Yeah.
And you don't know who the killer is, so it's definitely in that. But a witch using dark magic on a dark moon kills the grandmother. So but you don't know who she is. She's just called the witch. So, you know, and that's the prologue.
Yeah.
And so it has that. But like I said, it's a paranormal. And the B story is this chick, you know, she doesn't want to be a witch. She's went to college. She's made her life. She works for this, you know, she's not claiming herself to be a witch.
Yeah.
She's not, you know, she's gotten out of it, but she ends up back in it.
I think what you're talking about here is, if anyone out there has ever listened to the podcast Writing Excuses, you need to write it down. Writing Excuses. Start back at the beginning, work your way through. It is essentially a master's class in writing as a podcast. It is a really, really good podcast. But this past year they did a series on elemental genres. And you keep saying mixing genre, and that's not necessarily always what's happening. Elemental genres are the very basic genres that have nothing to do with marketing. So you might have a book that its genre is romance, but it may have elemental genres of mystery involved. It may have an elemental genre of crime, or it may have an elemental genre of tragedy. And so you have your big genre. That is your marketing genre. It fulfills all the rules of it. But then within that story, you're going to have other elements. Otherwise, every story would be the same. So you're going to have a romance where maybe somebody dies, or you're going to have a romance where maybe there's a tragedy in the first act, or a romance where, I don't know, there's a mystery involved. They're falling in love, but as like a second track of plot, maybe there's a mystery involved that they are trying to figure out as they're falling in love.
Maybe the werewolf from the mall shows
and up. So yeah, a lot of times when people are talking about crossing genres, if you read the book, it's not necessarily a cross genre book.
But see, that's the thing though, and when I first started looking at this, because I just like what I like. There are certain kinds of books that are in certain genres that I do like, that I don't like. It doesn't matter that it's that genre.
Nobody
I just
likes
don't like
all music from a genre.
So I was like, okay, well, how am I supposed to, because you have to choose, how am I supposed to choose a genre? You know, if it's about multiple elements.
If you're writing for yourself and you're not trying to be traditionally published, you don't have to. If you're writing to be traditionally published, you definitely have to. If you're writing to self-publish, you have to, but you have a few more options because you can list it in multiple genres. But if you're writing to be traditionally published, the publisher needs to know what genre it is so that they know how to market it. Otherwise, no one's going to shelf it.
I guess my beta readers will help me.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of times what people think, if you're a writer and you're thinking, wow, I screwed up, it's cross genre, unless it literally is two genres smushed together, you probably, what you have is one big genre and then a couple elemental genres in there, and that's fine.
I'm not going to the street, small town, and kids come to her for advice or for some other reason. It's just paranormal.
Yeah, I think that would be considered paranormal. But then again, if nothing paranormal happens in it, and the witchcraft is treated as if it's a regular religion, then it would be contemporary.
It would be contemporary.
I mean, here I am, I'm writing past, and in it, It deals some with African traditional religion.
Like
It's not a paranormal book. It's not.
It just has a supernatural bit or two.
But it may not, because those scenes are written as if it also could be mental illness. So you're not necessarily sure whether it's paranormal or whether it's mental illness. So it is not a paranormal book. Now, when I take that to a publisher, they're going to want to call it paranormal, or they're going to want to call it black fiction, and both of them piss me off, because if it was a Christian book, they wouldn't call it paranormal fiction. You can have a Christian book with God in it, and it's not paranormal fiction, it's just fiction. But because African traditional religion is considered paranormal, all of a sudden it would turn into a paranormal book. But it's not. It's contemporary fiction that edges towards literary fiction. At least if I have anything to say about it. At least if I get through the revision and make it good enough, it will. How long have we been on here?
An hour and 15 minutes.
You have got to be kidding me. Oh man, we have steaks to eat.
6. Yeah, we have steak. I have veggies to cook too. I have zucchini to cook.
I think we are going to turn it into a pumpkin. Is that what we're saying?
It's getting about that time.
Well, I want to thank everybody for the live chat. That's awesome. Nobody ever comes to my live streams and is that active. And this live chat was popping, which is really cool.
I shared it in both my Facebook groups, and I Twittered it. How about that? I tweeted it. I Twittered it. I tweeted it. And I was an English major. I think before we go, I would like to say one thing. If you have a creative outlet, no matter what kind of creative outlet it is, that creative outlet is as important to your self-care as anything else is with self-care. Because if you don't take the time to express your creativity in some shape, fashion, or form, and Maya and I both talked about how we didn't do art for a while, how we didn't do writing for a while, it will stagnate you. And it just, I don't know, it made me feel like I was missing a huge part of myself. And it took me a long while to get that part back. Yeah. I felt numb and in limbo without being creative. And it made me, I'm a much better person when I'm creative. I'm a much nicer person. Mm-hmm. I'm much more easy to get along with, and I'm happier in general. The more creative I am, the more happy I am.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. You know, like I said, being creative is part of what makes us human. And it is an important part of our humanity. And when we don't have creative outlets, we do tend to stagnate. And we get angry and frustrated. And our energy doesn't have a place to go. And bringing a creative outlet in your life is really important. But that said, if you start out with one creative outlet and you find that it doesn't work for you, there are so many other types of art involved, whether
knitting, crocheting, quilting, music, singing, dance, all kinds of things.
Just find something, try it out, see if it works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, explore and try something different. And I think that's really important. You can't say, well, you know, I tried to be a writer and I failed. No, you tried to be a writer and it just didn't fit you. And maybe you're actually a dancer, or maybe you actually love to work with leather or wood. So, you know, to me, I think that's really important. I think you exemplify that in how you've moved around from art to art. I think me, as someone that started out in one genre and found a love of short stories and realized I like literary fiction, I think that's really important. I think we both are good examples of evolution. I think we both have evolved in multiple ways.
And I think the more that you evolve, the more that you become self-aware and you are discovering different, different parts of yourself, the more you'll find that creativity comes in a lot of facets. It comes in a lot of ways. And you can be creative in more than one way. Like if you like to knit, but you also like to sing, nobody says you have to do one or the other.
You can do both.
You don't have to choose.
Yeah, you can definitely do both.
You just have to make time for both.
There is that, you know, I want my extra 6 hours a day. Like, where's my extra 6 hours in the day?
I've realized the more, lately I've been doing morning pages again, which is why I'm restarting the Artist Way on the 1st. I've been doing morning pages again. And morning pages or evening pages, depending on the day. My nights and days have been screwed up. Mm-hmm. But I think doing that again, and I may not follow the artist way verbatim, but I'm definitely going back to taking artist dates and to doing the morning pages and to doing some of the exercises, because I miss writing every day. And I do write every week. A few days a week I actually get writing in, but I'm not writing every day anymore.
Yeah, I mean, unless
it's journaling, like I do write every day, but it's, you know, it's a different kind of writing.
Yeah.
I miss writing the fiction. So I've got to get back into it. And July's camp, NaNoWriMo, is around the corner.
I might have something better for you.
And I don't think I'm going to, if I do Camp NaNoWriMo, it would be like 10,000 word goal.
Yeah.
And it's just for the community. It won't be I'm not going to push myself for a big goal. Usually I do at least 25,000 or 30,000 words. I'm not doing that. If I do, and I think I'm going to do July's Camp NaNoWriMo, but I think I may just pick 5,000 or 10,000 words.
I've never been a daily writer. I've always written every week, but I've never been a daily writer. But this last bit of writer's block, I pretty much stopped writing new words. And one of the things that I realized is just I've been in revision mode for a really long time, and I need some new words in my life. And Strip Cover Lit, who is somebody that we've mentioned, is doing the Hot and Sticky Challenge again this year. Adrian brought it back, and so you have 3 months instead of 1 month to write 55,000 words. It comes out to like 578 words a day. And I will be doing the Hot and Sticky Challenge this year.
Persephone's doing it too.
Yeah.
I don't know if Persephone's
I like
watching,
it because it's a much smaller goal. It's something that's really digestible.
Well, that's
and
broken
there should be
down
a lot
to that's what, right at almost 30,000.
It comes out to 55.
No, it's 55,000 in 3 months.
Yeah.
So you're what, 20-something thousand a month?
Something like that. Under that. 20 in 3 months would be 60, so yeah, just a little bit less.
So, I said it backwards. Just a little less.
You know, if anyone's looking for something that to get them writing but doesn't want to bite off a big chunk like NaNoWriMo, I think that's a really good goal.
5,000 words a week.
Something like that. It's only like
5,000
it's less than
words
600 words a day. So, you know, I'm still deciding on my project. There's 2 projects because I've been in revision mode for so long. Writing a new thing is a big deal, and there was a short story I was turning into a novella, and I never finished it. But I kind of want to do something new. I kind of want to. I like reading them. And so I'm thinking I want to do something new, and I have a new idea, and I kind of feel bad for abandoning that novella, but I think I'm going to do it. And part of what's interesting to me about it is because I don't have the skills to write this, and I know in advance
out of your comfort zone.
what this novella will do. It will take away my strong point in my writing and eliminate it. Which is scary. Like my biggest strength in my writing will not be in this book, and that's scary.
Yeah, but it'll improve your writing.
Yeah, it will. So I think I'm going to give it a try, and I'm going to use the Hot and Sticky Challenge to do it. So there, I plugged.
Well, I know. I need to do something. I don't mind whether I'm writing. If I write 50 words or I write 5,000 words in one day, I don't care. I just want to write something, even if it's a sentence that has to do with the fiction.
See, that is a much more healthy outlook on life. I'm not there yet.
I mean, I may not be able to write a sentence every day, but if
I write feast or famine.
But if I could just get back into the writing, I think, and have like certain days, maybe I'll do certain days. I'll be my writing days, so it's not and I'll go back to, instead of willy-nilly in it, I'll just, I'll go back to writing, like I'll pick certain days and those will be my writing days.
Yeah, I feel like NaNoWriMo just created too much of a binge mentality. I can't do 16,000 words every day for eternity, but I feel like I can write 600 words a day. And I want to build a habit. My goal is to build a habit that I'm writing every morning and I'm revising every afternoon. Like that is my goal. And I think this will be a good opportunity to get me going.
Before we go, does anybody have any questions? Because we have some dinner.
We have dinner. Because Rockstar is a rock star.
He's a rock star. He's rocking the grill.
Now we're on a delay, so give him a couple minutes. I don't think they have any questions for us.
I just said, do they have any questions? See my commenting. I want to get back into writing more as well. Vixen said, me too. It's awesome. Maybe y'all can do one with Tamara too.
Tamara is on vacation.
She is in West Virginia.
Yeah, she's in West Virginia right now.
And
she normally lives in Hawaii.
Yeah, and I tried last time or the time before that, Stephen King was going to be in West Virginia, and I was actually going to go to West Virginia, but then I guess something got canceled. I would love to meet Tamara in person. Absolutely love to meet Tamara in person. Along with a lot of people. Right above Virginia, right above and to the left.
Well, that doesn't help me. I'm from California.
Okay, we're South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia.
I might be able to make that happen. So
I don't know how long she's going to be there.
Oh,
she's going to be there for a whole month, I think.
Yeah, I know.
And I think she just got there last week or the beginning of this week, right?
Yeah. Well, I am plotting some things, so I may not see tomorrow, but I may be able to have something awesome.
Okay. So Persephone too. Yeah, Persephone's in Texas, y'all.
Oh, I wish I would have known that. I was just in Texas.
Persephone is in Texas.
I did not know that.
She is in Texas.
I was in Texas 3 weeks ago. I could have done a video with her.
You go back to
I'm not going back to Texas. I got to be back in North Carolina in 3 weeks.
You got to be back to where?
New Orleans.
New Orleans?
Yeah, I'm getting
I would like to go to New Orleans. My best friend from forever, Sandy, her family, a lot of her family lives in New Orleans. Yeah. Well, outside of New Orleans, they live in a little tiny town called DeRidder in Louisiana, right outside of one of the army bases. Actually it's a dry town.
Yeah.
They don't sell
Yeah,
alcohol.
I can't live there.
Self-discovery and breaking out of the box. Yes.
So important.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I think this went really well.
I think so too.
I really enjoyed being on your show. And I want to get you on my show.
Yes, we can do that later. After we eat, we can have some wine or some whatever.
Tomorrow because I'm tired.
Or we can do it tomorrow. Yes.
Yeah.
We can do it tomorrow.
We'll plot. We will plot.
We'll plot. We can go on Maya's channel.
Ciao.
And we'll just tweet about it. Bye, y'all. Okay, so now I have to go to the Google thing.
Go to the Google thing and click stop.